this is really interesting to me. And there aren't more than a handful of journalists who have been neck deep in Russiagate from the start, and you're one of them. I'm not one of them because I freely confess that when this was all unfolding, I had just started at NBC and I was trying to do not non-political stuff. And it was a delight not to be immersed in all the Russiagate nonsense back then, which seemed like bullshit, but you really had to get neck deep in order to know one way or another, and there were few who did it, and you're one of them. So now that it all comes out, that it was even more of a hoax than we knew, people like you are invaluable who have been on it from the beginning. So let's go through it because there's new. Like we've been having Taibbi on. We had him on twice last week to walk us through the initial tranches of information, what Tulsi released that one Friday night, what we then gleaned from that House intelligence report of 2020 that was stuck in a vault at CIA until it was just declassified, and we got a look at it last week. And we've learned that the intelligence community was preparing a report for Barack Obama, Presidential Daily Brief, that was going to really downplay Russia's interference. And then Obama said, hold on. They had a big meeting. And the next thing you know, he received a report saying, oh, Russia did interfere. It was bad. It was bad, sir. And then we got the January of 17 intelligence community assessment that said they interfered and they did it to help Trump. And now we've learned that second, we learned from Matt Taibbi last week, who analyzed the latest releases for us, that did it to help Trump thing was just completely made up. They knew it was made up. Brennan required it based on a bunch of bullshit. The Steele dossier, yes, but also 3 other really flimsy, even more pathetic pieces of so-called analysis or data that were just completely made up, and he knew it. Some of them preceded like 2014 analysis before Trump was even running. So that and did it to Trump help win thing was completely made up and nonsense. And now you've got a piece out talking about how that's not all that was nonsense. The Russia interfered in the election piece also turns out to be almost entirely bullshit, including the piece we all accepted, which was that they hacked those DNC emails. They were responsible for hacking the DNC emails, and that later got posted on WikiLeaks. So do I accurately state like the overview as to where we are now?
Yes, and the intelligence that has just been declassified by Tulsi Gabbard gives us some really important new information on the latter piece that you mentioned, the core allegation at the heart of Russiagate, even before collusion became a public thing. It was that Russia hacked the DNC and gave the emails to WikiLeaks. That basically broke out in June 2016, followed by the release of the WikiLeaks emails in July 2016. And at that point, the Clinton campaign, through its contractor CrowdStrike, was the first entity to say that the Russians did it. And a lot of people in the media just ran with it because that's what they were saying. And for some reason, if you accuse a foreign actor of something, then we just have to take it on faith. That's sort of an established playbook going back to, the Iraq War and many other similar propaganda campaigns. And then the intelligence community assessment that you talked about that was released in January that formally endorsed that, said with high confidence, Russia hacked the DNC, gave the emails to WikiLeaks. And along with collusion, that Russian email hacking allegation was the core plank of Russiagate. Now, we all know by now that collusion was a complete scam, laundered through the Clinton campaign, through Christopher Steele. Nobody, even in corporate media that was all about it, even defends that anymore. Even Adam Schiff, I think, has stopped defending the collusion allegation, even though he was claiming for years he had seen secret evidence of it. But as you said, they have clung to the Russian email hacking allegation. And what we get now from Tulsi Gabbard's declassification is that in September of 2016, less than 2 months before the election, the FBI and the NSA, which are the 2 premier intelligence agencies that would be able to investigate this hack and leak allegation. The FBI taking the lead in investigating the hacking of the DNC, and the NSA is, we all know, like the premier surveillance agency in the world. They can see anything that comes in and out over cyber warfare. So they'd be in the best position to assess whether or not Russia hacked the DNC and gave the emails to WikiLeaks. And what they said, and we're only learning this now, nearly 9 years later, is that they had low confidence in the Russia hack and leak allegation. That was suppressed. Instead of the public hearing about that, the Obama administration put out a report through Clapper, who was then heading the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, and Jay Johnson, who was heading Department of Homeland Security, on October 7th. And they said, in the name of the intelligence community, that they have high confidence that Russia was behind the hacking of the DNC, suppressing what the FBI and the NSA had said. And that remains the same after the election. There was another assessment circulated that we learned about through Tulsi Gabbard that said the picture of the attribution of doubting the attribution of Russia had not changed at all. And the reason was, as the FBI and the NSA said, we didn't have the technical evidence for it. And that was the point that people like myself had been making, is like, yes, intelligence officials were telling us Russia did it, but where's the evidence? We were never told it. And now we know the reason why is because they had none. So that gets suppressed. And as you said, then Obama orders the production of a new intelligence community assessment that gets released in January 2017. And the low confidence assessment of the FBI and the NSA gets buried. And someone might argue, okay, well, fine. What if the U.S. got new intelligence after the FBI and the NSA first made that low confidence assessment? Well, now we know from the declassified HIPSI report that you mentioned that just came out that basically
that's the House intelligence report from 2020 that was in the vault. Keep going.
Exactly. Now we learned from them that basically no new intelligence was collected after the election, that most of the intelligence that went into the ICA was collected before the election, which means at the time that the FBI and the NSA made their low confidence assessment that Russia hacked the DNC, no new evidence was collected after that to change their minds. And think about it. This makes sense. At the same time as the Clinton campaign was framing Trump as a Russian asset, they were also hiring a firm, CrowdStrike, which first accused Russia of hacking the DNC. And when the FBI went to CrowdStrike and said, can we investigate the DNC servers for ourselves? CrowdStrike said no. And for some reason, the FBI agreed to that. This would be as if, I accused someone of robbing my house. And then when the police came, I said, yeah, I think that person did it, but you can't investigate yourself. You have to rely on my own internal investigation. But that's
okay,
what happened.
Let me jump in, because that raises an interesting issue. Why would the FBI accept that? Why would the FBI say, okay, we accept your word, Hillary Clinton, that CrowdStrike is saying it was the Russians who hacked the DNC emails, and therefore we accept that it was Russia who hacked the DNC emails. And it brings me to a report that's just out, or it's coming, I guess. Hold on, I want to make sure I have it right. Fox News yesterday reported that before the FBI ever launched its probe into Russia and collusion with Trump and all that, before that, U.S. intel agencies had credible foreign sources saying that the FBI would help spread the Russia collusion hoax. That, in other words, we're going to see documents, according to Fox News, I think this week from Tulsi, that show before the FBI started probing Trump and this alleged collusion nonsense, they had been told by credible foreign sources U.S. intel agencies had credible foreign sources that indicated the FBI, one of our intel services, was going to help spread the Russian collusion hoax. So in other words, is that Russia? Russia's they know the FBI is going to help Hillary spread nonsense about them and Donald Trump?
Well, we do know that John Brennan briefed Obama right before the Trump-Russia investigation was open on July 31st, that he had picked up intelligence that Russia was aware of a plot in which Hillary was going to frame Trump as a Russian asset and tie that to alleged Russian interference. And Brennan got that and briefed it to Obama. And now we learn, actually, what Brennan was concerned about was not that Hillary was framing Trump as a Russian asset, but that Russia was aware of it. That's what allies of Brennan have said. And that's why even when Brennan sent a referral to the FBI, making sure that they're aware of this in early September, James Comey later said he couldn't remember it. It didn't ring any bells. That was his testimony to Congress. You're not aware that the CIA told you that a major presidential candidate was framing her rival as a Russian asset, which you happen to be investigating on. And look, just based on what we know already, the FBI claims that the Steele dossier had nothing to do with the decision to open up Crossfire Hurricane. But yet we also know that
the investigation by the FBI into Donald Trump and whether he colluded with Russia to win.
Correct. But we also know that weeks before the FBI opened up its investigation, Victoria Nuland, who was then a senior State Department official and a very hawkish bureaucrat when it comes to Russia, and was really alarmed by Trump's rhetoric on the campaign trail, where he was criticizing foreign interventions and even talking about getting along with Russia, even saying we don't want to have World War III over Ukraine. Victoria Nuland approves the deployment of an FBI agent to go to Rome and meet with Christopher Steele and receive his dossier. And this FBI agent received the dossier. This is early July 2016, and gives it to his colleagues. And then 3 weeks later, the FBI opens up the Trump-Russia investigation, immediately uses Steele's dossier as source material, including for surveillance warrants on Carter Page. And they want us to believe that this had nothing to do, that the FBI receiving the Steele dossier weeks earlier had nothing to do with opening up Crossfire Hurricane. And they want us to believe the official pretext is this ridiculous official predicate of George Papadopoulos, a low-level Trump campaign volunteer, receiving, quote, a suggestion of some unspecified Russian help. It doesn't make any sense. So if this Fox News report is correct, that there's new evidence that the FBI was in on this, it tracks exactly with what we already know, because they did everything
what else?
they could to
It explains the behavior
theory.
that seems somewhat mysterious right now.
Yeah, exactly. And by the way, on the issue of CrowdStrike, what the public also wasn't told until a year after Mueller shut down was that CrowdStrike in December 2017, their president, Sean Henry, who, by the way, used to work with James Comey and Robert Mueller at the FBI, he testified before Congress in December 2017 that CrowdStrike, which had first accused Russia of hacking the DNC, actually had no evidence, that's a quote, no evidence that these alleged Russian hackers actually took anything from the DNC. And that's a pretty big admission. You're accusing Russia of hacking and leaking these emails, but you have no evidence that they actually took anything from your servers. So how can you possibly make this allegation? Well, the public wasn't allowed to ask this question because that was buried for almost 3 years and only got released a year after the Mueller probe shut down. So that's just another example of countervailing evidence that comes out years after the fact that undermines this explosive allegation that at the time, if you recall this, it seems so silly now, like hacking, leaking emails. It's, people were comparing this to Pearl Harbor and 9/11. Even if Russia did do that, you can't compare it to these seismic events. And by the way, we do, I think, far worse things around the world to other countries.
Right, we do the same.
Stabilize. Sure.
And by the way,
even if we
Russia
did-
has done this in many elections. It wasn't just the 2016 election in which they tried to sow chaos or amplify, bad news articles that would make us fight. That was before I went to interview Putin, that was one of the main things that I learned was what he was really interested in doing is sowing chaos. Like they would amplify, for example, in 2020, maybe Black Lives Matter articles that would sort of get people fired up and riled up and start like fighting internally. That's his real goal, is to make us fight each other. But like they'd been doing that for a long time. It was nothing new to help Trump in 2016.
What I think is documented is that a Russian troll farm put out some really dumb memes and ads on social media that nobody saw, and they were barely about the election. And that's documented. That's what Russia actually did. If you want to call that interference, okay. I mean, some Russians did do that. I don't think it impacted a single person in the U.S. Certainly did not impact a single vote, let alone swing the election, as we were told. I mean, there were academic studies trying to argue that Russian trolls swung the election. It's an insult to everybody's intelligence. And it was a way to cover up for the Democratic Party's own failures in that election and their refusal to come to grips with that.
Since President Trump was sworn in, his administration has made enormous progress at a breakneck pace. But don't forget, while they are moving mountains for the good of the nation, you've got your personal savings to worry about. And one of the best ways to look after your savings is through diversification, particularly with gold, like from Birch Gold Group. In the past 12 months, the value of gold has increased by 40%. And Birch was an advertiser on this show 12 months ago. If you had purchased then, you'd be 40% richer today. Now's the time. Central banks continue to bolster demand for gold by burying in record quantities. Global instability and tension is high, and Birch Gold makes owning physical gold so easy. Easily convert an existing IRA or 401k into a tax-sheltered IRA in physical gold, or buy some to store in your home safe. Just text MK to the number 989898, and Birch Gold is going to send you a free info kit on gold. Look into it, see if it's right for you. There's no obligation, just useful information to help you make a decision. With an A+ rating, with a Better Business Bureau, and tens of thousands of happy customers, take control of your savings today. Text MK to 989898. Thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.